7 disturbing disappearances that make no sense.
In June 2014, a 28-year-old German man named Lars Matank traveled to Varna, Bulgaria with a group of friends. They were on vacation, enjoying the beach town, the cheap drinks, and the nightlife. Lars was by all accounts a calm, quiet guy. He wasn't someone known to get into fights or cause trouble. But while out one night at a bar, Lars reportedly got into an argument with a group of local men, possibly over a football rivalry. The fight left him with a ruptured eardrum, which meant he couldn't fly home with his friends.
Damn!
The doctor told him he needed to stay behind and let it heal. His friends offered to stay with him, but Lars insisted they return to Germany without him. He claimed he'd be fine. He just needed a few days to rest. Alone in Bulgaria, Lars checked into a cheap hotel near the airport. What happened over the next few days remains one of Europe's most chilling disappearances.
Really?
Lars began acting strangely. He called his mother several times, sounding panicked. He told her to cancel his credit cards. He said people were following him. At one point, he left the hotel in the middle of the night, claiming he was being watched by 4 mysterious men. He even texted his mom, asking what the side effects of an antibiotic he'd been prescribed were.
Thank you so much,
His
Skater.
behavior kept escalating. The hotel staff described him as nervous, pacing, and constantly checking the windows. Then, on July 8th, the day he was scheduled to fly home, Lars arrived at Varna Airport, and things took a dramatic turn. Surveillance footage from the airport shows him walking into the terminal calmly at first, but within minutes, he appears agitated. He's seen speaking to a staff member, then backing away nervously. Suddenly, without any visible trigger, Lars sprints through the terminal, dashes through the automatic doors, and runs at full speed across the airport parking lot, leaving behind his luggage, passport, and all of his belongings. The last known footage of him shows him...
Hey, yo, first of all, terrible airport staff, right? You're telling me someone's just walked into the airport with a bag, yeah? With a bag, and then ran out the airport with no bag? How did he not get stopped? How did he not get stopped?
Speed across the airport parking lot, leaving behind his luggage...
And if he did get stopped, he might still be here today.
Passport, and all of his belongings.
He was fast.
The last known footage of him shows him vanishing into the trees near a construction site.
What?
No one has seen him since. His disappearance has become a breeding ground for theories. Some believe he had a psychotic break.
Yeah, chat. Do you reckon, like, from the fight or something, it did some head damage and, like, it's messed him up? Do you reckon that's what happened? He's, you know, he maybe ran into the forest or something, fell down a big hole. Yeah, anything could happen in the forest. I'm not gonna lie. You could have run into a bear's mouth. You could have fell down a hole, fell down a well, abducted by alien. The list goes on. But the reason why he ran to the forest, maybe head trauma.
Potentially brought on by a reaction to an antibiotic he was taking, or a latent mental illness triggered by stress. Others are convinced something more sinister was happening, that Lars was genuinely being followed or targeted, and whatever he encountered in those final moments was terrifying enough to make him run into the wilderness, barefoot and defenseless.
Wow.
There were alleged sightings in Eastern Europe for years after, but nothing ever confirmed. The strangest part is that his mother insists that Lars was not mentally ill. She believes he was in danger, that he may have stumbled upon something he shouldn't have, or gotten involved in something darker than he realized. The image of him running, wide-eyed and desperate, has been viewed millions of times online, yet no one knows what scared him that badly, and no one knows where he went.
Damn, bro, that's actually nuts because, like, well, then again, yeah, in Bulgaria, the forests might be bigger. But the fact that you just seen him going into the forest and just disappeared.
Crazy. In 1912, in the small town of Opelousas, Louisiana, 4-year-old Bobby Dunbar disappeared while on a fishing trip with his family near Swayze Lake. His parents claimed he vanished sometime during the day, possibly while wandering near the water. A massive search was launched immediately. Hundreds of volunteers scoured the area.
I don't know why, but I'm already thinking parents did it. I don't know why. What do you mean your kid just disappeared whilst fishing?
Dragging the lake, searching the woods, and even setting off dynamite underwater in case his body was stuck in the lake bed. But Bobby was gone. The town was devastated. For 8 months, his disappearance became a local obsession. Then, in early 1913, a boy matching Bobby's description was found traveling with a man named William Walters, a traveling handyman in Mississippi. Walters claimed the boy was the son of Julia Anderson, a woman who had entrusted the child to his care. But the Dunbars were convinced the boy was Bobby. Walters was arrested for kidnapping. The authorities arranged for a reunion between the boy and Bobby's mother. At first, the boy didn't recognize her. Witnesses later claimed she hesitated, unsure if the boy was actually hers. But after spending a few days with him, she announced to the press and the police that he was, in fact, her son. Case closed, the newspaper said. Bobby Dunbar had been found, Walters was sentenced to prison, the boy was returned to the Dunbar family and raised as their own.
Okay.
But there was a problem. Julia Anderson, the woman who had entrusted the boy to Walters, showed up. She insisted that was her son, Bruce, and that the Dunbars had taken him. She had no money, no lawyer, and no...
Wait. You're fucking losing me. You're losing me. Hold up. You're losing me. You're losing me.
...and raised as their own. But there was a problem. Julia Anderson, the woman who had entrusted the boy to Walters, showed up. She insisted that was her son, Bruce, and that the Dunbars had taken him. She had no money, no lawyer, and no support. When the courts ruled in favor of the Dunbars, she lost custody forever. She returned to Mississippi heartbroken, labeled a liar and an unfit mother by the press.
What?
For decades, Bobby Dunbar lived under that name, unaware of any of this. But in the early 2000s, Bobby's grandson began investigating the family's history. Something didn't sit right.
Wait, did they steal a kid before he went, before he disappeared or afterwards? Wait, chat, whoever's good with words, help me out. So before Bobby disappeared, did they steal the kid, or did they steal the kid and pretended it was Bobby afterwards? I'm very confused. Afterwards? Wait, so they lost their kid Bobby, and then they got another kid who wasn't their Bobby but said it was Bobby and stole it. So they don't really have their Bobby. They've got a new Bobby. Oh my god, that's fucking weird. What weirdos?
Eventually, the family agreed to a DNA test comparing Bobby's descendants to those of the Dunbars. The results shattered a century of belief. The boy who had grown up as Bobby Dunbar was not biologically related to the Dunbars. He was Bruce Anderson. Julia Anderson had been telling the truth all along, which means the real Bobby Dunbar was never found. To this day, no one knows what actually happened to him. Whether he drowned, was abducted, or suffered some unknown fate, his case remains officially unresolved. Meanwhile, an innocent man was imprisoned, and another family raised a child who wasn't theirs.
Wow.
All because the truth was too painful.
No. Hey, chat, you guys know I'm a very good detective. You guys know I'm a very good detective, yeah? I'm gonna make this make sense. They raised and stole the new kid because they already know what happened to their last kid. You ain't gonna do that if your kid genuinely disappeared. You ain't gonna steal someone else's kid. Mainly because you're gonna know the feeling. Right? Somehow their kid died on purpose by them or accidentally by them, but they know the kid's dead. And their fault either way. Accidental or purpose. Accidentally drowned or they killed him. You know what I'm saying? And then they stole the new kid. They found the new kid. They've got a new kid. That's the only way it makes sense.
And the need for closure outweighed the facts.
That's the only way it makes sense.
In 1928, 9-year-old Walter Collins disappeared from his home in Los Angeles. His mother, Christine Collins...
What? Oh, you think they genuinely did think it was Bobby? No, but you would know as a parent, surely, even though they look alike. Like, how do parents teleport twins? Like, you know your kid. You just have that feeling, right? I don't have a kid, so I don't know, but surely you would.
...had given him a few coins to go see a movie while she was working. He never came home.
Himself?
Christine went to the police, who launched a search. His case quickly made headlines. This was during a time of rising fears about crime and child abductions, and public pressure on the LAPD was intense. For 5 months, Christine kept the search alive. She printed flyers, organized searches, gave interviews. Then, in August, police in Illinois picked up a boy who claimed to be Walter. He was brought to Los Angeles to be reunited with Christine in front of reporters. But as the cameras flashed and police beamed with pride, thinking they had solved the case, when Christine saw the boy, she said, "That's not my son." The police told her she was wrong. They insisted he had changed from the trauma. They encouraged her to take him home on a trial basis.
On a trial?
Christine reluctantly agreed, likely pressured by the public scene. But after just 3 weeks, she returned to the LAPD and again said, "This is not my son." This time, the police had her committed to a psychiatric hospital, claiming she was hysterical and refusing to accept reality. Meanwhile, the boy admitted that he wasn't Walter. His real name was Arthur Hutchins, a runaway who had been pretending to be Walter Collins to get a free trip to California.
Yo, why the police act? Yo, that's crazy, mate. Mate, the police are saying to the mom, "Yeah, this is your son." And then when the mom says, "No, it ain't my son," the police is like, "You crazy. You're getting fucking locked up." Bro, what?
He thought it might help him to meet his favorite actors. So that meant the police had publicly reunited a grieving mother with a random child.
That's
and then
crazy.
punished her when she didn't go along with the lie.
That
That
crazy.
should have been the end of the story, but it gets darker. Around the same time, a Canadian man named Gordon Northcott was arrested for a string of murders on a chicken farm in Wineville, California. He had lured young boys to his property, imprisoned them, and eventually killed them. When authorities raided the farm, they found evidence linking Northcott to multiple victims. One of those victims, they believed, was Walter Collins. Christine pleaded for answers, but Northcott never gave a clear confession. He was convicted for other murders, but the fate of Walter Collins remained unresolved. Christine spent the rest of her life trying to find out what happened. She never gave up, and the city of Los Angeles never formally apologized for what they did to her, for locking her away when she refused to accept a lie.
Hey, in today's world, she would have got a fat payout in today's world.
The story later inspired the film Changeling with Angelina Jolie, but the real horror is how it actually happened. A grieving mother gaslit by the system, a lost child exploited for headlines, and a police force more interested in good press than truth.
Damn, bro.
In August of 2008, a 24-year-old Canadian woman named Kayla Reed vanished from a small town in British Columbia. She had recently moved back in with her parents after going through a rough breakup and was trying to start over. One evening, she told her mother,
Yo, chat, with all these disappearance stories, can we make a deal? So I know a lot of you guys. You know when even in the UK, right? Here's the deal. If I happen to disappear at any point, chat, right? If I happen to disappear, for the person that finds me, I'll give you $100. And a slap on the ass as a good gesture. You know what I'm saying? Is that a good deal? So if I ever disappear, you guys need to find me. Okay. Good deal. Good deal. Good deal it is, man.
she was going to meet a friend at a coffee shop nearby. She left around 7:30 p.m. wearing a light hoodie and jeans, carrying her phone but no purse.
Fine, if you don't want a slap on the ass, a slap on the back. If you disappear, Izzy probably did it, and I'm not going to cross her. Why? Hey, chat. How much to keep the slap? How much to keep the slap in the ass? You have to give me the 100 back.
She never showed up for that meeting. Her phone went dark less than an hour later. What followed was an immediate and massive local search. Flyers went up and volunteers swarmed the forested areas around town. Search dogs found nothing, and there was no sign of foul play. No dropped phone, no torn clothing, no surveillance footage. It seemed Kayla had completely vanished. As expected, her parents were devastated. Kayla was described as responsible and grounded.
What happens if we kidnapped you and then help the people trying to find you? If you do that, then you are a crazy motherfucker, and I fully respect it, because that's one crazy attitude. And we're gonna both end up on a body cam, which kind of like is like, you know, It's kind of like the circle of life. I do content watching body cams. I'm now on a body cam being watched. Right? You know what I'm saying? Not that I want that, guys. I'd rather not have that. But, you know, you can't disagree with the circle of life. So, fair play. Fair play.
Not the kind of person to run off without telling anyone. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Eventually, the case went cold. But then, a full year later, something happened. Kayla showed up. In the early morning hours of July 5th, 2009, she walked into a hospital nearly 200 miles from where she disappeared.
Oh, damn.
She was disoriented, dehydrated, and barefoot. She was also noticeably thinner, sunburned, and wearing clothes that didn't belong to her. She refused to speak to doctors. She simply wrote her name down on a piece of paper.
Thank you so much for the
hospital staff called police, and after fingerprint confirmation, it was officially her. She had been missing for 11 months. Her parents, of course, rushed to see her, but even then, Kayla said almost nothing. She stared at them blankly, occasionally smiling, but she didn't hug them. When they asked where she had been, she said only, "I was in the dark. I was safe, but it wasn't me." Authorities were baffled. What? She had no visible injuries or signs of abuse. Toxicology came back clean. She had no head trauma, no signs of having been drugged long-term, no tattoos or branding or anything that would suggest organized abduction. She spent a week in the hospital under psychiatric observation, and then she was quietly released to her family. No charges were filed and no statements were ever made.
What the?
Kayla never spoke publicly about where she had been.
Aliens!
She deleted all her social media accounts and moved away within a year.
Nah, chat, I agree. Aliens, bro. That's the only explanation for this. Nothing else makes sense. She got abducted. She got abducted.
Reporters tried to follow up, but her family refused all interviews. The case was officially closed, a missing person who returned.
They can't talk about it.
No one ever got the answers they were looking for. Just a young woman who came back from somewhere completely changed. She wasn't hurt or injured, but she was different.
Hey, chat. See, listen, this is why I like that you guys can, like, fact check me in the future, whatever, if anything like this happens to me, right? So, chat, to check if I've changed as a person or if I'm in a right state of mind, just ask me if I want a McDonald's. If I say no, I don't want a McDonald's, that's not me. That's not me. You know something's wrong, bro. You know something's wrong, physically, mentally, everything. If I say no, it's not me, it's the wrong person, man.
One nurse from the hospital said that in her last shift before Kayla was discharged,
or if I drink
the girl
a
looked her
Pepsi.
dead in the eyes and whispered, "Don't go into the woods alone, they find you there." No one knows what she meant, but no one who worked that case ever forgot it.
Fucking aliens, I knew it. Aliens.
In October 2017, in the city of Santa Rosa, California, a 15-year-old high school student named Connor Hastings disappeared while walking home from school. He took the same route every day, a suburban street surrounded by homes and parks, but one afternoon he didn't show up. His mom called him, but there was no answer. When she checked with friends, no one had seen him since he left school. By 7 p.m., police were notified.
By the way, this is the exact reason you have to air tag your kids. Just saying. Air tag. My whole entire family is tagged. My whole family is his family. Even my friend Simsy, who's away right now, traveling, I've got them all tagged. I'm like goddamn James Bond with a fucking computer tagging machine. If you guys want tagged, I will tag you guys. Listen, chat. You don't do it in a stalky kind of way, right? You just let them do them. But it's a good safety thing. Like people deep it too much and are like, I don't want to be trapped, blah, blah, blah. Bro, it genuinely is a safety thing. Like my friend right now, like you guys know Simsy, who's, you know, traveling. I check it occasionally. And if something looks off, I will message him. And if he's all good. Like you never know if he, you know, what can happen. He might go missing. And then if he does, I will track him down. With you guys, like fucking James Bond and shit. You know what I mean? We'll go hunting. Hey, it's a good thing to do. It's good. I'm definitely going to trap my kids as well, 100%. Not in a weird way, just like safety way. And I'm going to make sure they know and understand its safety.
And a search began immediately. His backpack was found a day later, dumped behind a dumpster a few blocks from his usual route, but his phone was gone. For weeks, the case dominated local headlines. Police dogs tracked a scent trail that ended suddenly at the edge of a wooded trail, where it seemed to just stop.
I do have a
It was
particular
strange
set of
because no
skills.
tire tracks were left behind, and there were 0 witnesses. When detectives questioned classmates, rumors began spreading. Some kids claimed Connor had been acting paranoid in the days just before he went missing, like he was jumping at noises and asking people if they'd seen the man in the red jacket. One friend said Connor had recently asked about how to tell if you're being watched. The trail went cold, but 5 minutes later, in March of 2018, Connor returned, or rather, he was found. A 911 call came in from a payphone, one of the few still operating in the area, and the caller reported a teenage boy sitting on a bench, unresponsive, outside a small town library 60 miles away. When police found Connor, he was silent and staring ahead. His hair was much longer than when he'd last been seen, and his clothes were filthy. He had a spiral-bound notebook clutched in both hands, but it was completely blank. He wouldn't speak for over 24 hours. When his parents arrived, he hugged his mother tightly and then burst into tears. But even then, he said very little about where he had been. Over the next few days, he opened up only slightly. He claimed he had been taken by a group, but couldn't describe their faces.
What?
He said they kept him somewhere without clocks, somewhere cold. When police asked how he escaped, he said, "They just let me go. I think I passed their test." A month later, he gave one final statement before refusing to speak publicly again. He said, "There were others. I heard them. I wasn't the only one.
Wow.
But I might be the only one they gave back." The notebook he had been holding the night he was found remained empty. No one could get him to write anything in it. But on the final page in the bottom corner, written in shaky pen, were 4 words: "I was not alone." Police never identified any suspects. The FBI reviewed the case, but released no findings. Connor eventually changed schools and now lives under a different name. To this day, his case is officially solved because he came back, but nobody really believes that that's the end of the story.
Damn, bro. Abduction.
On the night of February 9th, 2004, a 21-year-old nursing student named Maura Murray vanished after a minor car crash on a remote stretch of Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. Nearly 2 decades later, no one knows where she went, what she was running from, or who might have been waiting for her. Earlier that day, Maura left her dorm at UMass Amherst after sending emails to her professors, telling them there had been a death in the family and she'd be gone for a few days. But no one in her family had died. In fact, no one in her life was planning to leave. She packed a bag, withdrew nearly all the money from her bank account, and bought a few items, including alcohol from a nearby store. Then she drove north into the White Mountains, alone and quietly, without a clear destination. At approximately 7:27 p.m., a local woman called 911 to report a car accident outside her house. A small black Saturn had crashed into a snowbank on a sharp turn.
Holy.
When police arrived 20 minutes later, they found the vehicle, but no sign of the driver. The car was locked.
Yo, so far this is just sounding like she just wants to get away from the world, right? And some people just like that. Maybe she just wants to go to the middle of nowhere and just live a peaceful life. And then she got into an accident. And then she's like, "Oh no, my family's gonna know where I'm at. Let's hop out."
Shield was cracked. Both airbags had deployed. A box of wine was spilled across the interior. The only thing missing was Maura. A bus driver who lived nearby had seen her just minutes before police arrived. He stopped and spoke to her through the window. She looked cold and shaken, but declined help. He drove off and called in the accident, but by the time the officers reached the scene, Maura had vanished. Not just walked away, vanished. Police dogs tracked her scent for about 100 yards up the road, then it stopped abruptly. No footprints in the woods or any belongings left behind.
Was she
It was like
teleported?
someone picked her up in a car just out of view. Her phone and credit cards were never used again. The bottles of alcohol she had bought, some were gone and some remained in the car. There were no obvious signs of foul play, but nothing added up. She had no history of mental illness. Friends and family said she wasn't suicidal. She was planning for the future. And yet, she was gone. In the years that followed, her case became one of the most obsessively followed mysteries on the internet. Armchair detectives, forums, and podcasters picked apart every detail.
Weird.
Some believed she staged her disappearance to start a new life. Others believe she was abducted by a stranger or someone she arranged to meet. Then there are darker theories. A serial predator operating the mountains or a cover-up. But nothing concrete ever came, and her body was never found. Something obviously happened to Maura Murray that night. Something that was likely deliberate. And to this day, the forest around Route 112 still holds its secrets. And the most chilling part is if she was taken, whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing and never made a single mistake.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
In the remote town of...
I reckon she got very, very, very unlucky, like with the whole situation, the car crashes. But then again, even before the car crash, her just like disappearing like that, if she had a life and a future in check, that's weird as well. The whole story is weird. But then she got in a car crash and then kidnapped. Mad.
Nome, Alaska, a place isolated by hundreds of miles of tundra, accessible mostly by air. People are used to strange things happening. The winters are long and brutal, and the nights seem endless. But even there, among the quiet, snow-covered streets and howling wind, the disappearance of Rick Hills in 2004 is something people still whisper about. Not because it was the only one, but because of how it happened and what was left behind. Rick Hills was a 37-year-old electrician, hardworking, quiet, not particularly social, but he was well liked by the people who knew him. He lived alone in a small cabin on the outskirts of town, near the edge of the wilderness. It was not unusual in Nome to be that isolated. Many people preferred it. But Rick's case became more disturbing when it was discovered he wasn't the first one to go missing from that area. In fact, in the 10 years before he vanished, over 20 people had disappeared from Nome under similarly strange circumstances.
20!
The FBI would eventually investigate it as a pattern, but Rick's story was different, more personal and terrifying. On November 13, 2004, Rick failed to show up for work. His boss called him repeatedly, to no avail. That evening, a coworker drove to Rick's cabin. His truck was there and the lights were off. It had snowed lightly that afternoon, but when they got closer, they noticed something strange. No footprints in or out of the cabin. It was like Rick had never left or returned.
Maybe he went ages
The
ago.
coworker knocked, but there was no response. So he walked around the property and saw that the back door was open. He called out and stepped inside. The place was undisturbed. The coffee pot was full and his cell phone was on the table, but there was no sign of Rick himself. The weirdest part was the bed was made, not like someone had just gotten out of it. The weird part was that the bed was made so neatly, it looked as though no one had ever been in it. The coworker called the police and they searched the home. Then they searched the surrounding area and then the woods. They brought dogs, drones, helicopters, and still found nothing. Even with the light snowfall, there should have been some sign of direction, like a trail or blood or something, but there was no trace.
Nothing.
The man walked out of his cabin with no coat.
Hey, you guys are saying Bigfoot got him, yeah? What, you think Bigfoot's gonna make his bed? Actually, we don't know much about Bigfoot. Maybe he did. Maybe Bigfoot's amazing at making beds.
No boots, no keys, and simply just disappeared.
Yeah, maybe.
The investigation didn't find foul play. He reportedly had no enemies or debts. Even his bank account was untouched, and his phone had not pinged a tower since the day before. But then, 2 days later, something happened that the public wasn't told about until years later. A hiker about 30 miles north of Nome found something bizarre. A man's sock frozen into the mud of a game trail. Nearby, hidden under a thin layer of snow, was an old Polaroid photograph. It was dirty and crumpled, and its image nearly destroyed by the cold, but the outline was clear. It was Rick's cabin, shot from the woods. The angle showed the living room window,
What?
and in the reflection was a face, but it wasn't Rick's. The photo was turned over to the police, but they never released it to the public. Years later, an officer who worked the case anonymously told a local journalist that it was the most disturbing thing he'd ever seen in his career.
So he was
That the
being
face in the
watched?
reflection didn't look entirely human. He described it as off, like distorted, pale, the eyes too wide, and the mouth slightly open, as if it had been caught mid-whisper. Like,
oh shit! Bigfoot can take pictures? Fuck off! He knows how to use phones? Hey, no wonder we can't find him. He's tapped into the police radio station and he's tracking us all. He's got trackers on us all.
someone caught staring who didn't expect to be seen, as he described it. The area was searched again, but nothing was found, and no further signs of Rick.
Mad.
Locals started calling it the Watcher, saying something in the woods had been taking people. The disappearances dated back decades. Natives had legends about the Dark Man, a thing that lived between the trees and came out at night. When the FBI eventually got involved, they said the disappearances were likely due to weather, accidents, and alcohol. But not Rick. People close to the case knew better. They knew it wasn't weather and it wasn't a
Well, you know it wasn't that because there's a goddamn photo of his cabin with a weird face in it. You know there's more to it.
misadventure. Rick was used to those woods. He wouldn't have wandered out barefoot without a jacket in sub-zero temperatures. He would not have left his door open, and he wouldn't have vanished without a single track in the snow.
That's weird.
To this day, Rick Hills has never been found. Some say it was just a tragic accident. Others say Rick saw something he shouldn't have. Something that was watching him.
Today's story is about a church.
Damn, bro. Yo, I'm scared to just look out my window. What if something's watching me and as soon as I see it, I'm disappearing? Alright, guys, don't look out your windows tonight. Okay? I always feel like somebody's watching me. Funny enough, Caesar, I do feel that way. You guys are watching me right now. Wait, does that mean if I watch you guys back, I'm gone? How does that work?